Welcome to Big Blend Radio's Food, Wine, and Travel Show, where we go across country and travel the world with members of the International Food, Wine, Travel Writers Association. Let's go. Welcome, everyone. So, every second Tuesday, every second Friday, and every third Monday, we get to chat with writers and destinations that are all part of the International Food, Wine, Travel Writers Association, who we say IFWTWA. It's an easier thing to say, but today we're going to interview Jeffrey Spear about his book, My Life in Gluttony, A Culinary Adventure. And from going through his book and reading about Jeff, his life is all about culinary adventures. Wouldn't you say? Welcome, Jeff. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on. This is going to be fun.
It is going to be fun. So let's just start. Where did this culinary adventure begin? Because this is your third book, right?
Correct. Yeah. So
Okay.
this was I've been doing a lot of work globally, working
Yeah.
with food producers around the world.
Except for Antarctica, right?
That's right.
Yet.
Helping these producers develop products and introduce them into Western markets. I've been working primarily in countries that are considered emerging economies. So they're poor, they don't have the expertise in marketing, they don't understand international foods in the marketplace. And so I've been helping them. And so I'm traveling all over the world to places where usually people don't go. And I'm talking about the foods I'm having, and my friend said, Jeff, you should write a book. And so when thinking about, okay, I can write about the countries I've been to, but I go, well, wait a minute, I don't want to just talk about the work. And so I realized that, well, wait a minute, I'll write a book about from my childhood, where the places are around the world where I've had the most extraordinary culinary encounters. And so it starts when I was in Boy Scouts. My very first culinary experience was making tuna noodle casserole over a wood fire for Boy Scouts.
Wait, why not? Yeah.
Well, I had to cook. It was one of those tests you had to pass. And I came home from the camp out and I said, Ma, let's have tuna noodle casserole. And she goes, I don't do casseroles. No, but I still make it. And I've upgraded it because, what I made in Boy Scouts was, cream of mushroom soup and all canned stuff. But I have my better version now. And so anyway, so going from these youthful encounters, and I grew up in Maryland, so steamed crabs and crab cakes. And then all the places I've lived and worked, which includes places like LA and Washington, D.C., and then as far-flung as Malawi and Georgia and Argentina. So, different foods, different places, but the book talks about all these different interesting foods. It's not a travel book. It's about these foods and what the encounters were like.
And you've got recipes, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah.
So for someone who may not be able to go over there, they can try and make it themselves.
Yeah, and these recipes are pretty easy. I think there might be one or two that are a little bit more demanding, but overall, I don't do demanding recipes unless I have to.
Okay.
And so
You want to keep your cooking to easy.
Well, life in the kitchen's hard enough as it is. Why make it harder with?
I should have fun. To me, all cooking should be done with a glass of wine. That's just me personally.
Yeah, there you go. Or something different. I'm a spirits drinker, so
okay. So what do you drink when you cook?
Or,
Are you gonna have a rum while you're gonna put the lime in the coconut? Okay.
There you go.
Call the doctor the next morning, right? So, well, you're in Jacksonville, Florida. So I mean,
right.
Hey, now did bushwhackers go as far, east? Like bushwhackers from like the cocktails, like from the Gulf Shore? Oh,
I don't know
well.
that.
Oh,
It's a cocktail?
Yes.
I'll have to
yes.
look it
You
up.
got to go, the border of Alabama and Florida, that area, Mobile and all that area, the Gulf Shores, bushwhackers. Yes. And pretty much on like, if you go to like Panama City and those areas, they have bushwhackers. And you really forget that you're drinking liquor, and that's the whacker part of it.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, that's I make a hurricane, and
okay.
and it's just sweet and fruity and fun, and one and a half of those later, and you're all starting to get silly. So
yeah, that's like my dentist when we lived in Mexico tracked us down after he told me I'm not allowed to drink tequila after dental work. I'm like, no, I had a root canal. I'm going to do whatever. And I'm like, okay, sure. I'll behave. And of course, he finds us downtown Ensenada in a tequila bar, and his daughter comes out of a truck He just stops in the middle of the street. And this is downtown Ensenada. His daughter comes running out with a bottle of tequila. And she says, Dr. Ruiz says, no, only this. This was my bottle of tequila. If you must drink, you must drink this. And it was good. And I can't remember the name of the tequila, but it was good. And then he brought us rum from Cuba when he went to Cuba. And I was like, this is the best dentist ever. You know?
Well, I got interested in rum because I was working in Guyana, and that's where the El Dorado comes from the Demerara distillery. And I was told it was unsafe for me to go out around town, and so I basically was either in the hotel or in the office I was working in, but I didn't go anywhere. But the hotel had I don't know, 3 or 4 different years of aging of this El Dorado rum. And so I started with the young and had the middle and then went up, and then I worked my way back and worked my way back up again because I had nothing to do in my free time besides read and drink the rum. And ever since then, I've been trying all kinds of
rumming it up.
Man.
Well, I know you're going to the IFWTWA conference that's happening in October, everyone. If you go to IFWTWA.org and you're in the world of food, wine, and travel, check it out. It's going to be in Lafayette, Louisiana, and I believe you all are going rum tasting. I heard there's rum involved in Lafayette.
That's not a destination I would expect, but hey, bring it on. I'm happy.
We had rum near Lafayette in a town, in an area called, I think, Homer or near Rice. Yes, there is a place because they grow rice, right? Which is why boudin is part of their thing. Is like you use the rest of the meat and then you use the rice that is grown in Louisiana, and of course Tabasco comes from there.
Yeah.
But the rum, we went to this distillery, and I swear, oh my gosh, because the sugar, they grow sugarcane in Louisiana, and we met the sugar baron. And if you don't get your questions in quick, he gets kind of like, I'm the sugar baron. Like, don't waste my time. But we were like enjoying the rum so much. And they had this Grand Marnier at the end that was, it was liquid gold. It was absolutely just, everyone leave me alone. I just want to chill and drink this.
You're giving something to look forward to.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the same distillery, but if you have that opportunity, go. And obviously Tabasco is a place.
Well, I've written about some of the distilleries here in Florida, and there are a lot of places that make things that I wouldn't expect them to make. And so you never know. I mean, even all over the world, I find out that people are making stuff, go, really? You make that here? And, sometimes it's good and sometimes it's ordinary. It's never terrible. But, it's always, that's part of the adventure. Is, let's local stuff. Let's try it.
The first bit of moonshine I ever really had was in a brand hotel in Louisiana. And they have like meeting, like, you had like a Hampton and stuff like that. It wasn't a Hampton, but it was affiliated or something. But they have like a beer and wine hour from 4 to 5 because it was pretty much a business kind of hotel, and everybody goes there. And the manager of the hotel, we were out doing all these graveyard things and photographing graveyards and whatever. And she says, you must get here by 4 o'clock for this. And I'm like, what, beer and wine? She's like, trust me, you and Nancy need to be here. And I'm like, all right. And it was hard to get there because we got delayed because I got stuck in the car. I couldn't undo my seatbelt. I got stuck, and I'm going in the graveyard, right? And I'm like, there's a ghost. It's holding me back from this experience. We get there. We did make it. And there's this little guy, I think his nickname was Elvis. I'm not joking, but he's got to be in his 70s. And he had jugs under the table of moonshine that he made, and he had all these different flavors. And I remember there's this guy going, well, I'm flying back to North Carolina. I want to take some with me on the plane. I'm like, you can't take a jug of, a gallon jug of shine. And I'm like, you're going to North Carolina where this stuff comes from. But he did. He tried to get on a plane. And all I can tell you is we slept really well that night. It was.
I bet. Well, whenever I travel, I always look to see what's on the bar, because I always find something new and different. When I've been in Chicago, I found a couple of really good barrel gins. You never know what you're going to encounter, and so that's part of the adventure. Is whenever we go to restaurants, I tell my friends I'll be right there because they go to the table and then I go to the bar because I want to scan the shelf to see if there's
Is
something
there
I should
something
try.
new?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh, that's fun. Now, what would you say in your area now, Jacksonville, that would be something people wouldn't think that they
Well,
could
you
have?
know, we have a few distilleries here, so you know, you
Mm,
try them. There's what's interesting is one of the bars that I frequent. It's a restaurant called The Local here in. It's just up a couple miles away in Atlantic Beach. Sorry, in Neptune Beach. Atlantic Beach is on the other
oh
side of the
yeah.
city.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I know
and
what you mean. Yeah.
and whenever I go up there, I just interviewed the owner for a story I'm developing, and he brought out a couple of bottles of. I didn't know this, but apparently tequila is a regional term, like champagne is a regional term.
Yeah.
But he
Mexico.
brought
Yeah.
out 3 bottles of stuff that are 2 of them were agave-based spirits, so
hmm
not tequila, but they had other names. It hasn't quite
hmm
become part of my vocabulary yet. And they were really good, really smooth, really easy
Mm.
to drink. But then they were white spirits. And then the one that was the most interesting is he had a purple corn whiskey, and
Wow.
it was, I never had anything like it before, and it was easy to drink. I told him, I said, leave the bottle here. I can have half of it polished off in no time because it was so smooth and so easy to drink.
Wow.
It's a brand called Casa Elemental. If you
Mm.
see it anywhere, try it because it's really good. And apparently they have a barrel gin, and I think they make a rum as well. And I told him the next time the rep comes around, see if he'll bring a tasting bottle, and I'll
Mm.
come up.
Wow. I've never heard of that purple corn
Yeah, it's
whiskey.
new to me too. So, but he's turned me on to a few things when I've come up there. So, you
But
know,
but agave, we're gonna have to do something because
yeah,
with all these tariff things, we don't want to be messing with our tequila imports.
yeah.
I'm scared about our tequila. And first thing I did is I heard tariffs. I ran to the grocery store, bought up all the avocados, and went and bought a bottle of tequila. I did. I was like
Well,
paranoid, you know.
if you buy,
So
look, if you buy a case of whatever it is, that should last you through the administration.
that really,
Well, it depends on how bad it really gets.
I know we might be doing a case a day. Who knows? But no. But I think it's interesting what you can make out of something. You know what I mean? That's the part of
Hmm.
traveling and tasting, local foods or regional foods is, oh, what are their ingredients? What is their
Yeah.
lay of the land? It tells a story of the people, the culture. Sometimes it's new cultures that create food out of that region too, which is always interesting as
Yeah.
well.
I find it fascinating when I find ingredients that you just don't find anywhere else. So I've been working in Georgia, the country of Georgia, for the
Hmm.
past 10 years. And there's an ingredient
Wow.
there. It's a plant, and it's called jonjoli. And I don't think you can even get it in this country. I'm not sure, but it's this really interesting. It's called, the plant in English is known as, I think, bladderbush or bottle, something like that.
Bladder pod. Oh.
But anyway, it's this really interesting texture. And they marinate it and they sell it in the grocery store in jars, and you can get it at the deli counters as, you know, a
Mm,
fresh salad. And it's really cool, but you don't find it in lots of places. And it's the same thing I'm finding now with African ingredients, is
mm.
that slowly but surely stuff's becoming available, but I'm learning what to do with the stuff. So,
That's the difference. Like green bananas, like, we grew up on those. We would eat unripe mangoes, where here they're like, don't eat the right unripe mangoes. I'm like, we used to
yeah.
pickle them and eat them and do all kinds of things. It's different. We'd pickle like watermelon, and it's just different. It's even like the sweet potatoes are completely different in Africa than here,
Oh,
you
sure.
know,
And
like really good.
when I was in Ecuador, that's one of the areas where potatoes came from. So when the Spanish were
Hmm.
sailing around everywhere, that's where sweet potatoes came from when they brought them back to Spain, and then they felt
Okay,
their way
cool.
around in other places. But anyway, Ecuador and that part of Latin America, they have, I don't know if it's hundreds or thousands of different varieties of potatoes down there. And
I see
so
all of that.
I was having dishes with potatoes, colors and shapes and textures that I'd never had.
Well, isn't that part of it is also that you start to learn the history of the actual ingredient, the plants,
Yeah.
and because I think sometimes unless we go to specialty food stores, we don't see what there is around the world to
Hmm.
taste. We
Yeah.
get very regulated here. We start to fall into a rut of what we eat and drink.
Oh, sure.
in this country, I think sometimes, but we've become foodies too. Your book talks about that too. We've become, a little bit more aware with Food Network, and now Google and books like yours
Yeah.
help get
Yeah.
people to be like, hey, taste something different. Is that part of your goal as a author, and what you do is to get people to taste something new?
Well, I'd like to think that people want to try different things.
Hmm.
I mean, otherwise I'm
Sure.
just preaching to a choir somewhere. But I like to introduce this stuff to people. One of the things that I do with my friends, they're foodies. They
Hmm.
like to eat. They don't necessarily know much about cooking or,
Hmm.
food history or anything like that, origins of various ingredients. But we go out and we try stuff, and I'm always introducing them to something new. They like to
That's
go out with
cool.
me because I say, hey, we're doing this soon. There's a Haitian restaurant in town,
Oh,
and,
cool.
and they have stuff that we just don't know. And so we're
Mm.
gonna go check it out.
Now, you've got bunny chow in your
Mhm.
book, and I grew up on that. Bunny chow and curry bunnies in South Africa are a
Yeah.
big deal. And I think it's also, it's kind of almost, I, I could swear I had them when we lived in England too. I think there's like a British part in there, um,
In
that's
in
connected, that's connected to that dish. I don't know.
there
Just
may be
because of
I
because it's got, the curry and everything, which is Indian, but of course Indian cuisine is, because we've got a lot of Indian
yeah.
people in South Africa. That is like I'm still trying to find the best samosa, and I know everyone says it different here, but samosa, that's how I grew up saying in South Africa and Kenya. The best samosa I had was in a pizza restaurant in a small town called Dinuba in Central California.
Mhm.
It
Well,
was
the
an
best,
Indian guy with the New York or the Manhattan pizzeria, and he's got samosas, pea curry samosas, and I was like, finally, someone knows how to make them. You
yeah.
know?
The only reason I eat Indian food now is because when I was working in Malawi,
Mm,
food safety is a very big concern. And so they said, Jeff, there are only so many restaurants you can eat in. We'll let you know if they're safe or not. I mean, I wasn't eating anything fresh because they wash it with the water and you can get sick. But anyway, the Indian restaurants in town were safe. And I started eating these curries and I didn't have prior experience. And wow, this stuff is great. And so whenever I would go back, I'd find out where the Indian restaurant was. I'd get a whole bunch of takeaway and I'd bring it back to the hotel. We had a fridge in the hotel and I put it in the fridge and microwave it every day. It was great. And I love Indian food now.
oh man, it's the best. I
Yeah.
mean, the layers of how they do it's like Mexican food is the same way to me in that
Mm.
layering of flavors, you know. It just there's an art to it, you
Yeah.
know.
And I think I've got a couple of curries in my book, but I don't think they're fabulously conceived recipes. I don't think they're
Mhm.
as authentic as some chefs would prefer, but they taste good.
Yeah, they taste good and accessible to make, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah, now tell everybody about the recipe that we're featuring up on our site. So everyone
Okay.
can see the link in the episode notes for this recipe. Tell it because I'm not pronouncing it. Well, I could,
So
but you wouldn't want me to.
it's from Serbia and it's a stew and it's called it looks like it says makalika, but it's actually pronounced muchkalica. And
Okay.
I like these stews that are meat and capsicum and tomato, and it's sort of
Yeah.
like chicken cacciatore, but these are different ethnic foods that are similar. And muchkalica is like that. I used to get it. There was a little kiosk down the street from where my hotel was, and it wasn't always open, and it had lots of things that were they were either seasonal or just the whim of the owner. But muchkalisa wasn't always available, but whenever it was, I would have it, and I love the stuff.
So is it like goulash in a way,
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
yeah?
It's a lot of these recipes that I like. I start realizing, oh, these are really similar, because it's again, it's what the protein will change. But it's capsicum, it's tomato, it's might have a little bit of crushed red pepper in it, or a little bit of
Mm,
something that gives it spice. Uh,
mm.
Whereas the Georgian recipes, they tend to be a little bit different because Georgians make sauces out of walnuts. And so when you
Wow.
throw walnut and liquid into a blender, and if you have a good blender, it becomes this wonderful creamy sauce, no dairy in it, but it's this wonderful creamy sauce because
Wow.
of the nuts. And they are, texture wise, they're similar to the muchkalica and similar to cacciatore, but it's a completely different flavor. And then they've got blue fenugreek is one of the ingredients that they use a lot of, and that to me is one of the flavors of Georgia.
What is that?
Blue
What is
fenugreek?
Yeah.
It's a spice.
Okay. Well, some of us don't know. That's why you wrote a book.
Sorry. Yeah, no, it's a fabulous spice. There were a few spices that I brought back from Georgia. One was the blue fenugreek, and then there's another one that's it's called zafrana, and it's not saffron, it's powdered dried marigold leaves.
Oh,
and it's a popular Georgian ingredient. And yeah, there are a couple of others that are popular over there. So I just always make sure that I have some in my pantry so that if I feel like eating Georgian food, I can make it.
Now, saffron, that's a big deal. A friend of mine went to Morocco and she came back with this amazing saffron. And she's like, you've got to store it this way. And she's like, it's like gold. Don't use it all. Only do this. And it was like, I was scared to touch it by the time she was done. But I did make a good risotto with it.
Yeah, it's saffron's an interesting spice. Years ago, someone had been in Egypt, came back with a baggie full of saffron and gave it to me.
Yeah, and hers was like in a baggie, and it's like, dude, how did you get through the airport with that?
Yeah. But then I go to the fancy food show and I see this stuff and I ask how much this little vial is.
Oh.
And it's like, are you kidding me? I had no appreciation. I mean, that baggie that my friend gave me, it must have been a couple $1,000s worth.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, you got to think about the history of spice going around the world, how important spice is, and how it really did. I mean, you were talking about Indian food, help preserve food. It's the original preservatives in a way. That and fermenting,
a lot of it because it was so rare and people didn't know where to get it. This is back when people were sailing in ships, no engines. But people were keeping the point of origin of these spices very secret, and spices became currency. And so black peppercorns were used as currency, salt was used as currency. And I don't know about some of these others, but I know how protected these destinations were until someone smuggled plants. I mean, these were punishable by death kind of things, but they were smuggling plants out of these countries and found that they could propagate them at home. And then all of a sudden the market changed.
It's like how the medjool dates went to Arizona. Actually started out of southern Arizona in a town called Yuma. Then Indio, Southern California got them. And, they did good marketing. Let's put it that way. But Yuma, I mean, they grow naturally in Yuma because it's the sunniest place on earth. It is the sunniest place.
I was in the West Bank in Palestine and went to a couple of date producers, and it's the same weather as Arizona.
Yeah, it's beautiful though. I mean, dates are good for you, and there's so many things you can do recipe wise. But I have a question now. I'm going to have to go find this now because you had an ingredient that I was like, I can't pronounce it, but you have this ingredient and you sent it to me. It's a photo, and we have to talk about eating little birds and mice too, because that's something that people may freak out on. Now, where did it go? Okay, is this it's like purpley long spear things. Okay, it's I think it's the recipe you're talking about. I don't know. Churchkella.
Oh, churchkella. Churchkella. That's a Georgian food. It's a Georgian confection. Some people say it's the Georgian Snickers bar.
Oh, okay.
But what it is, and it doesn't, it's a different recipe. What they do is
it is different. Now look at it.
Georgia produces the walnuts, hazelnuts, a lot of different nuts. And they will take the nuts and they'll string them. And so you get a long string of nuts. And then they have this, I forget the term for it, but it's this thickened grape juice stuff that they make. And they, with the nuts on a string, they dip it in and pull it out. It's just like candle making. And they
look like candles.
And I thought they were candles the first time I saw them because a lot of
waxy. Yeah.
But it's this chewy, nutty confection.
Huh.
and it's, a lot of people like it. It's what they use. There was a producer I was working with, and they were promoting it as the ultimate energy bar. And
Oh,
they
wow.
because it is, it's nuts and
It's,
sugar and juice,
yeah.
but it's churchkella, and it's a very common confection. It's actually iconic to Georgia. Um,
Mm,
and yeah, if you ever
mm.
see it, be careful. One of the things I found is I bought some that was packaged for tourism, so because it looked like a
Okay.
nice gift. And when I got it home and gave it to my friends, the stuff tastes like crap.
Okay.
It really wasn't good. It was more because it was a tourist thing. God only knows how long it was sitting in the store to begin with.
Oh, could be. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it.
But it's worth trying. Yeah.
Well, now you tried, so there's mice and birds. Now I'm kind of used to that from living in Kenya. And I mean, we also ate all kinds of things as kids and bugs and stuff that people don't want to talk about, but you do. Flying ants come out when the
Yeah.
rain comes. The flying ants come out and we fry them and they taste like peanut butter,
Yeah. Well,
not
there's
chicken.
one of the recipes in the book is called char-grilled mouse, and it's from Malawi. And it actually, the recipe itself isn't mouse, it's chicken, because I changed it. But we're driving along on the road, and we're going 70 miles an hour, and there are these kids holding up long sticks, like
Hmm.
yardsticks, but they're round sticks, and there's stuff skewered on it. And we're going by so fast. This is my Tweety Bird story, because we're driving by, and I looked and I go, I think I saw some mice. And then I said, I'm paying closer attention. And we get to another commercial district.
Hmm.
And there's another guy, and I saw him off in the distance. And I'm watching, and I look, and it is. I did see my, and they sell these grilled mice. God only knows where they're produced or how they're produced, the hygiene. I never tried them. Apparently, people eat them cold like jerky,
Wow.
because they are cooked. And then one time we're driving along, and I was telling my colleagues about this, and we're driving along, and there's some people on the side of the road holding something different. It looked like cotton candy from a distance, because there was this bag of, and we pulled over and said, Jeff, you need to try this. And so we get up to where these guys are, and it's a white bag, and they pull the bag off, and there are these skewers. They're holding like about a dozen or more of these skewers with tiny little bird carcasses on the things,
Wow.
like 6 or 8 bird carcasses. And I'm going, and one of my colleagues, because they're local, they bought some and they're eating it in the car. It's like, no, I'm not doing that. And then one of my friends, I asked about it. I said, what kinds of birds are they? And he said they're LBJs. And I'm thinking it's like LB is the thing and a J. And I go, LBJs, what's that? And he goes, oh, little brown jobs.
Oh,
But
that's all.
I
The
think
little birds.
they're just these
That's
tiny little
funny.
birds that, like sparrows or things, they fly around, and on the skewers they look like tiny little roast turkeys.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, yeah, I mean, everything goes on sticks in Africa for some reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of seems like that when you're talking about that. I was like, everything kind of was on a stick
Well, it's
because it,
kebab. You think
yeah,
about it. There are a lot of
kebabs are,
a lot of
yeah.
countries. It's not just any one particular country. There are different countries because they
Hmm.
grew,
Yeah.
and so it's a popular way of cooking.
Yeah, that in South Africa we'd have a braai, which is like a
Hmm.
barbecue, and the Dutch would bring the boerewors, which is really fat sausage, kind of similar to the boudin you're going to have, but it's really, really fatty, and they would grill it with beer.
Mm.
That was the thing, or it was just the excuse to be outside with your buddies cooking it with
Yeah.
beer. So you can figure that out. And then you would have train smash, which is kind of like stewed tomatoes. Some people call it chakalaka, and it's like stewed onions, tomatoes, kind of a salsa, but we called
Okay.
it train smash. I
Huh.
know. And then you have pop, so they'd call it pop and vorse, and pop is like mealy meal, so it's like thick grits, kind of. Putu was Kenyan, they'd call it putu, and they
Mhm.
would boil it like maize mealy meal into like almost a rock, and you could pull it off, and then you dip it in whatever sauce with the meat and
Okay.
vegetables. But in South Africa, they would do that, and there were always kebabs for some reason. I don't know if it's the Greek influence too that was very prominent in Portuguese. It was such an amalgamation of cultures in South Africa that it's the food is fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really cool. And then they'd make potjiekos, which is pot of food.
You say.
Yeah, yeah, you pronounce all the Georgian stuff. I ain't doing that. I'll go Dutch. I'll do the Dutch.
Okay.
But poikikos is like a big Dutch oven thing. They put it in the ground and the kitchen sink. I know people that would do poikikos with beans and sausage, or beans and hot dogs,
Yeah.
Viennas, as they say over there.
Yeah.
And you'd like that. It's got sausage.
Well, talking about grilling stuff, when I was working in another African country, was Niger, and I was staying at the Grand Hotel du Niger, and they had a patio. Now, mind you, it's one of two Western-oriented hotels. The rest of the hotels are not by Western standards very comfortable at all. But they have a patio and a pool, out back, and it overlooks the Niger River. And they have this little grill house set up, and they just keep on churning out these kebabs with beef cubes and spices to dip it in. And it was fabulous. And we'd sit out on the deck. They have fruit bats over there. And so we would sit out on the deck, and at sunset, start looking up in the sky, and the fruit bats are flying around, and so watching the fruit
bats. Did they dip in the pool? Because that's what they use.
They don't come down. No, they don't come down. But it was fun to watch the fruit bats. And the most amazing thing about Niger is that when we were crossing the Niger River to come in the downtown section, traffic was moving slowly, and I'm looking in the river, and there's this guy he's up to his waist in water, and he's fishing. And then I looked a little bit further up the river, and there's a hippopotamus. And I said, is it safe for him to be in the water with the hippopotamus? We have people getting chomped in half all the time, because the hippos are dangerous. They'll come after you. My
mom got charged by one on foot.
Yeah. Oh, lovely.
Yeah. She worked for Joy Adamson, Elsa the Lion Born Free. People may Google that. She worked out in the bush, rehabilitating wildlife and also studying them. And she's an artist, and Joy told her, oh, go do your artwork on the river. There's hippo. You can sit there. Well, of course, that was stupid. It was part of her educating my mom about the wildlife. And all of a sudden, the hippo came, easel's gone flying, and she's up the embankment. But that's when you learn, do not believe when people, when they say hippos can really run, seriously, they haul. I mean, it's amazing because they're so massive, but they really haul, and you can get hurt.
I want a zookeeper to introduce me to animals that are large enough to do me damage. Just say, Jeff, here's the hippo. Hippo, here's Jeff. Make nice, and everything's cool. But out in the wild, even in the ocean, when I'm out there and there are bigger fish things out there, I don't want to be around them unless someone's introducing me, because I don't know what they are, and I don't know if they're going to hurt me, or no, thank you.
You study them, and then you start to learn, but they don't, unless you're, if you get in their way, or in their baby's way, it's fun. But now, going from making tuna casserole, to now, did you ever think your world would be about food and travel and writing about it, marketing it, doing all the work that you do and producing it? And I mean, there's so much to the food industry that I think consumers don't always realize how it got to your plate.
Well, I started out as a graphic designer, and I was doing a presentation at the Fancy Food Show about, this is going back decades. This is right around the time that the Food Network was happening. And people in the fancy food, in the specialty food industry, didn't understand packaging and branding. They just knew how to make good stuff. But this competition was happening, and people needed better packaging. They needed to talk about their stuff properly, have good communications and messaging. And so I went, and I was a speaker at the Fancy Food Show one year, and talking about all this stuff. And I get a call from the organizer. Hey, Jeff, how'd you like to do packaging and branding and label design in Serbia? And I didn't.
Why not?
I didn't know where Serbia was. But this is all going through my head in a flash. And I'm going, I don't know where this place is, but there's an adventure here. Yeah. And I just said yes, not knowing. I said, yeah, I'll go.
Oh, I love that. But doesn't that make life cool?
Yeah. And then I found out it was former Yugoslavia, and I understood. But at the time, I just wasn't global. And that launched my international career. And the writing came about over time as well, because I started writing for clients writing about their stuff. And then I
Yeah.
started writing about what I do, the
Hmm.
marketing and the packaging and that stuff for different magazines. And now it's a major part of my career. I mean, I'm probably more of a writer now than I am a marketer. Although
Do you enjoy it? You've got to, right?
yeah, well, look, if there's food involved, yeah. Yesterday, I'm writing a story about hamburgers, what some of the local chefs are doing with hamburgers and looking for really good hamburgers. And yesterday, I went to this one burger place, and I told the chef I'd written about this guy before, and he said, "Come on over, I'll make you some of my burgers." So I'm sitting there, now mind you, I'm taking pictures so that when the story's published,
Hmm.
I'll have photos. And he brings me out 4 different burgers. Each one of them's a half-pound burger with all this great stuff on top of it. I mean, how much fun can you have? I mean, just sitting there, trying these burgers. It was great.
That's awesome. I mean, it is fun. And I think what's so great is that chefs are getting recognition where it used to be you're at the back of the house, unless you were really at a high-end restaurant.
Yeah.
It was now people look up, oh, we met the chef.
Yeah. Well, so it's sticking with the burger story. A friend of mine said, "Have you ever had a burger at Wacko's?" And I'm going, "Where's Wacko's?" I said, "Oh, they have a sign out front. It says it's the best burger in Jacksonville." It's a strip bar. and my friend said, "Let's go and have a burger." So in the sake of journalism, we did. We went off hours, but there's a proper chef there because people come there to eat, not just all the other stuff.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
there's a really fun story that's going to come from that, just from that one experience.
I bet.
But
I
the
bet.
burgers, he made the burgers with a blend of ground bison, brisket, and short rib. And it was
Wow.
a really good burger. And until yesterday, the place at the burger shop that I went to yesterday, that owner, he's actually a very good chef. And that's one of the reasons I like interviewing him, is because he's got so much insight into the ingredients he's using.
Mm.
And his burgers finally rivaled Wacko's, but Wacko's is I can't recommend to people to go there because it's such a cheesy, tacky place, but it's a good burger.
I'm watching my mouth because I've got all kinds of little retorts to it, and I'll just shut up.
Well,
Yeah.
on the menu, the burgers are called hand jobs.
Oh, really? Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, no way. That is so funny. I'm gonna watch myself because I really can go there. So I'm gonna
Yeah.
behave. But I
Yeah,
do want to ask this. I mean, this brings up a good point. Good food can come from anywhere.
oh, sure.
A cart in the street, like you're talking
Well,
about,
they're
too.
getting Michelin starred, some of these places.
Right. Right. So we shouldn't we have to kind of drop our old mentality. And I think we're really good at that now. I think people really want authentic experiences.
Yeah.
And through Instagram has kind of become like the next food network. You know what I mean? And how we are now. It's like, oh, I went here. It's like people are one-upping each other of where they've been and eaten. So I think it's really cool to showcase where food comes from. But on the marketing side, do you sometimes go, okay, you've got to clean this part up so it's palatable to the audience? Or do you use that, like if they come from a location like a strip mall or something that, you know what I mean? Like, do you keep that
Yeah.
authenticity?
Well, you can be authentic and be clean at the same time. I mean, some of these
Yeah.
places, they do need to be cleaned up. I mean, literally from a hygiene
Hmm.
perspective.
Right.
I explore all these places. I try anything. Lately I've been I haven't the story's not developed yet, but I'm working on it. There's a 1 mile strip
We're
of
stuck on strippers and
well, man,
strips.
no. But there's a 1 mile length of road in Orlando, and it's was it West Colonial Drive, West Colonial Avenue. But anyway, it's basically filled with Asian restaurants and markets, but it's Pan Asian. It's not Chinese. It's not Japanese. It's all kinds of different ethnicities are there from Southeast Asia, and it's fabulous. But you walk into some of these places, and I was like, yeah, I don't know, but I'll
Yeah.
try it. I mean, they do have to, live up to certain food safety rules, otherwise they're shut down. So I'm
Right.
not worried about that. But I think if people really, for the people that are trying to build their business and expand, you have to
Mm-hmm.
go that extra mile and clean it up and say the right things and look a certain way. If you can get away with being down and dirty and grungy and all that and go, oh, we're just a little, literally a hole in the wall. Aren't we cute? But that only goes so far.
Yeah, yeah. I think people want an authentic experience from the story. I think the story behind it is
Yeah.
always something, right? How did this recipe come to be, or
Yeah.
food, that kind of thing. So, and
How, but
photography is massive too, right?
yeah.
That's a whole other
Oh,
thing.
yeah. Well, and you think about going to New York, the hot dogs from the carts in New York. I mean, I always get hot dogs. I have to. I
Yeah.
can't go to New York if there's it's got to be Sabret or Nathan's. If they're one of those two,
Okay, what are you putting on the hot dog?
nothing. Mustard if I put anything, but usually I don't need anything on it.
It's
So
just the meat, like in the bun. That's it.
yeah, well, if I put mustard on it, inevitably I'm going to go and
Yeah.
I'll bear it for the rest of the day. So that's why I don't put stuff on it. But hot dogs are great in Washington D.C. They have them too, but Washington has a sausage called a half smoke, which is kind of like a
Mm,
Polish sausage a bit. It's its own thing.
mhm.
And so I go whenever I'm in D.C. if the carts are operating in the neighborhoods I'm in, hey, do you have half smoke? Or you go
Yeah.
to Ben's Chili Bowl and get a half smoke.
Oh.
You know
Hmm.
about Ben's Chili Bowl. Ben's Chili Bowl is to Washington what Pink's is to Los Angeles, if you know
See
Pink's.
everybody. Yeah, there you go. So everyone has their thing, It's
Yeah,
like Nathan's hot dogs is a big deal,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
That's it. Everyone's got their like, I want it this way, and this is how it is. But that's how you have to keep the integrity of the origination of something.
yeah,
So if you're going to franchise, you have to keep it that way
yeah,
as you go around. But I'm not talking about like the big ones, those kind of franchises, but you got to keep that consistency in
yeah.
marketing.
And then there's a lot of regional nuance. And so, I was working with oysters for a while, and my client was an oyster farmer. He
Hmm.
didn't necessarily eat them. And
Hmm.
so I said, what's the flavor profile of your oysters? Because oysters have very complicated, it's like wine. They have all
Mhm.
these different tasting points. There's a wheel that I use that a lot of people refer to, and it's got all the different tasting notes. And I said, what's the flavor profile of your oysters? I don't know. So we had an oyster tasting party and we tasted them, and then we started comparing other places and understanding this thing called, just like wine has terroir, oysters
Mhm.
have merroir. And it has to do with the minerality and the quality of the water that the oysters live in.
Oh.
And so his oysters were coming um, uh, closer to the Pacific Ocean in the Pacific Northwest, not the Puget Sound. And so the water his oysters were in was cleaner and fresher. His oysters tasted entirely different from the oysters that you got 25 miles down the waterway into the Sound. And
Wow.
that became the marketing difference. And so lots of foods have these nuances because of where they're produced and how they're produced.
Mhm.
And any number of foods, it comes up all the time. Uh,
Mm.
and it's because of location.
So what do you think for travel writers, being part of IFTWA, right? Going in, we taste so many things, right?
Mhm.
Wine, all kinds of things. And sometimes it may be a new establishment and someone like you're saying who doesn't have that marketing part done yet. As writers, it's kind of our job too to really take time with what we're doing and not just go, oh, it's wonderful. Like give
Yeah.
those kind of notes, right? And sometimes that we're not there to do their marketing, but to
Mm.
step into that and not just repeat what someone's already given you. Does that make sense? Like have
Sure. And then sometimes when I was working in Serbia, this apple grower came in. And the only reason I remember the name of the town is because of this story. And I said, what's special about your apples? They're apples. I go, yeah, but is it a special flavor profile? Is it a special varietal? The cultivar, what's. And so he said, I'll bring you some apples. So he brought a case of apples. And I tasted it, it's like, it's an apple. And so what became the marketing element, just like there was Juan Valdez and Colombian coffee, this guy,
okay.
his growing area, his town was called Tavenkut. And I don't know if there's anything special about Tavenkut or not, but I said to him, it's a Tavenkut apple. That's how you market it. It's from this place. And whether it's significantly different from the others, it's a Tavenkut apple. And the point of origin makes it special. And that's the way a lot of marketing is done. And it may turn out that the stuff's actually pretty special, but the marketing started out just because of the point of origin. And it's not until you compare and contrast and you go, oh, this is really something. So,
Very cool.
yeah.
Very cool. So where is next for you? Where do you go next?
Well,
Back to the strip club. No.
if you've been following the news, a lot of the work that I've been doing globally has been funded by USAID.
Mm,
And USAID has been
sorry.
disbanded. So at this point in time, I think my work is going to be predominantly domestic.
Mhm.
And if the kinds of soft aid that USAID was providing gets picked up again by the State Department at some point in time, then maybe I'll be able to start up again. But for now, it's not looking good. I mean, that was a major hit. I was one of those people that, I
Yeah.
people now that they're on furlough, they've lost their jobs, they're looking for new jobs. At least I had my domestic work to fall back on.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. I mean, I have one client in Georgia that was not USAID funded, and so I'm still working with that.
Mm.
But all the other people that I was working with, they're small, they're poor. They, in Malawi, they couldn't afford electricity.
Right.
I was in Ghana, and we're working with a grain producer, and she was given by the funding program an electric dryer to dry the grains, because what they were doing is putting them out on screens and putting them up for the house. Well, birds and insects get into it, and so you have impurities, food safety issues. And they were still drying the grains up on the roof, and I'm going, why aren't you using the dryer? We can't afford the electricity. So,
that sounds
I was
just so
doing,
much like living in Kenya. That's exactly
well,
how it is. Yeah.
but the work that I was doing internationally, while it was a wonderful adventure, the work I was doing was lifting people out of poverty.
Wow.
And it was very rewarding work, very interesting because of the places I got to go to.
Yeah.
But until I find some other source of, and I have a few contacts for international work, but there's so many people out there now that have lost their jobs that I don't really know where this is going to go now.
Well, the tourism aspect is definitely changing. And I just did a podcast the other day that aired, and it was, at the end, I kind of was like, we need to all realize right now, I mean, it's going to change internationally, people coming here, that America is going to have to rediscover road tripping again, like they did during COVID. And, start exploring America. And America, it's what we do full time, is travel America right now, visiting parks and public lands, which could get anyway a little interesting, but we won't go there now too. But the food of America is incredible because we have such diversity here. And diversity of just the landscape, the topography is exactly like we were saying with the oysters, right? So the oysters that come out of Drake's Beach, or out in Point Reyes, and those areas, going to be different than the oysters you're talking about. So,
and we have so many different ethnic pockets around this country that
yeah,
you go there and you encounter foods that you don't encounter anywhere else. I love going to cities with Chinatowns because I discover stuff that I never see.
Yeah.
And I love Chicago because there's so many really great ethnic neighborhoods there, and you can get from one.
And there's hot dogs.
Huh?
And there's hot dogs.
Well, there's that too, but I tried to get friends of mine to, I don't know which one of the publications it was, but one of the writers did a multi hot dog stand 1-day tour. And he did it. It was a video tour. And by the end of the thing, he was feeling a little green and queasy. But I tried to get my friends that live there to take me to some of the hot dog stands. They're just not into it like I am. And a couple of the places are farther out. So they said, nah. So, but they did introduce me. I don't know if you're aware of, there's this style of egg sandwich, which is based on Korean influence.
Oh,
and there's a place in Chicago called Egg Tuck. And there are these Korean egg sandwich places. It's a new thing, and there's one in San Francisco, and they're all over. And it's a really cool food. So my friend didn't take me to the hot dogs, but he introduced me to this egg sandwich thing, which subsequently has gotten me to write a story about the tremendous versatility of eggs. And so in Chicago, there's an Indian restaurant called Tattoo, and they bake an egg curry, which is just hard-boiled eggs in a curry, and you put it on rice. And then there's, I forget where they are. I think they're in Texas. There's a deviled egg company, and they make all these fabulous. Who knew you could make a deviled egg in so many different configurations? I think it's deviledeggco.com, something like that. But anyway, and they make egg salad. And now I've learned that every one of their deviled eggs, every configuration they now make an egg salad in a jar that you can order. And so, but
Wow.
you find all this different stuff. Just like going to Lafayette, I'm looking forward to having the
boudin.
all the stuff that they've got there, and that's the fun.
Yeah, and Tabasco. They have Tabasco ice cream, That's very important. That's important stuff. And rum. Hey, just say, come on, you got to try it. So it's been so much fun. So it's the best way for people to get your book. Again, everyone, My Life in Gluttony, A Culinary Adventure, everywhere from Georgia to strip clubs in Florida. Anyway, I'm sorry, that's really not the subtitle.
The strip clubs aren't in the book. That's a story I'm working on.
Sorry, so wait for that. So the best way is spearwrites.com is your website, but for the book, Amazon.com is the best place?
Amazon.
Okay. All right. So, and then you're on Facebook and Instagram, right?
I am.
Okay. Yep. Well, we'll be following you. It's been such a pleasure having you on the show. I could talk to you for hours.
Yeah, that's the fun thing about food. We can eat and drink all day long.
I know. Let's just do that.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Big Blend Radio's Food, Wine, and Travel Show, featuring members of the International Food, Wine, Travel Writers Association. We encourage you to visit their website. We say IFWTWA, which is IFWTWA.org. You can also follow us at bigblendradio.com. Happy travels, everyone.